the act of not trusting yourself is a trust in not trusting yourself. So it's an impossibility. And a good friend told me that. And it's helped me out in many ways, many more ways than he actually knows. I feel powerless over my addiction. What? Like, you have to have power to feel powerless over something. It's the exact same, like, catch-22 type thing. To have the power to then bring yourself powerless, that means you have the power to not feel powerless and then deal with it. And I always tell people who tell me, like, I quit this or I quit that, whatever it might be, I'm like, don't say I quit, just say I stop. Because if you say you quit, you bring yourself this shame and guilt automatically that if you ever do it again for the rest of your life, which most of us, when we say, we don't understand how long that might be, if you ever do it again, you have just transgressed of something that you said you're going to do. You're just going to bring in shame, it's going to bring in guilt, bring yourself down, and you're going to start questioning yourself.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word balance?
First thing I think of in my mind when it comes to balance is a weight, a scale. So to me, like, the most balanced thing, you have to have each one on its axis. Balance is like both of them are perfectly aligned. That would be considered balance. It's the first, like, imagery I have in my mind. I think balance is also something that we all strive for and seek for. I think everything in life, I believe that everything in life exists on its own. I believe that nothing is good or bad, right or wrong, up or down, south or north, east or west. I believe everything just exists as it is on its own, and then a human comes along and, is able to elevate it or degrade it in the way that they wish, whether it's an idea, whether it's a thought, whether it's a god, whether it's a religion, a chair, a tree, a book, a car, a carpet, a bed, whatever it might be. So I think balance is ultimately where most of our work needs to come in, because things are not balanced on their own. So I almost feel like the human comes along and takes something and then to be able to balance it. Because you give someone an apple. If they're hungry, they're going to eat it. If they're upset at someone, they might throw it at his face. The apple didn't do anything. The apple is just there. It's a tool that can be used, up to how you wish to use it. And I think anything can be used in a great way, good way, bad way. So I think balance, the first feeling of balance is like, it's almost like everything we do is leading towards that. Like we always say, like, things are good in moderation, or don't take too much, too this, too little, too this, too that. Every time we use the word too, we're just trying to get closer to what is a healthier way of balance. And I think everything that we do ends up coming to balance. So those are my quick, short thoughts on balance itself.
And so, how do you think we find balance? Let's say in the realm of like emotions, right? You could be selfless and egotistical, right? And maybe those are not good binaries. Or you could be ascetic, right? I don't indulge in any pleasures, or an addict and overly indulgent. Sober versus an addict, right? So let's use something like alcohol, for example. Like, what's balance with alcohol? Like, what's balance? What will be balanced about that? Like, why does that relate with a scale?
So I think that obviously, I believe that each person is different in their balance. I don't believe there's an objective balance. I believe there's a subjective balance, and each person, they themselves kind of know what their balance is. Now, there's two ways to go about that balance. You can either, there's an experiential balance, which is like, oh, I never tried this. Let me. I'm more of an experiential, balance type of guy. Like, I need to try something, figure out at what point I don't like it, at what point I like it too much, and then I come back to it. So from alcohol, when I was a kid, definitely got blacked out a couple of times. I'm like, okay, that, shot number 14, 15, and 16. Yeah, those already like that's already like the blackout stage. Like, you don't want to get too far. And sometimes you go out and you take 3, 4 shots, and you're like, like, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. And you find your balance in between the 4 and the 13, So I'm more of an experiential learner. So sometimes you try it yourself, what was the example you gave? In the example of the alcohol, right? An example of the alcohol.
Addiction, an addict, overly indulgent. Like, for me, the example is I can't, if I take a sip of alcohol, I drink from morning till night, or I drink every single night and I go to blackout. And maybe the sober person, the guy in AA, I'll never take another drink again in my life. I won't even walk into a bar.
That sounds like unhealthy balance to me.
Right, but those are two
I
extremes, right? Yeah, those are both ends of the
yeah.
extremes. My question is, where's the balance between those two extremes?
So I'm gonna take the extremes in your example. Let's take AA. Is alcohol bad? No. Would you say it's good? No. It's, we want to say it's either one of those in itself. It's natural. It's a chemical. It's fermented. It's created by nature itself is alcohol in nature itself, you know? So in other words, you can't say it's good or bad. Now, the human himself, I personally, this is my belief. I don't think that I've tried doing AA for other stuff. I did SAA, and I could not get on board with it on two fronts. On the first front, simply being that everything comes from a negative. Everything itself comes from a negative, meaning we're all wailing in each other's sorrow and self-pity and hurt and shame and blame. And through us coming together, through all that, we're stronger together as a thing. Like I think the fourth word of the 12 steps, of which is like, I agree or I understand that I am powerless. That I couldn't get over that word. I think many people who first thought of can't get over that word. Me, powerless? Excuse me? The all great me, myself, and I. You're gonna call me powerless? Like, get the fuck out of here. Ain't no way I'm doing that. I couldn't get over that as well. But also, I couldn't go over the fact that everything came from a negative towards a positive, as opposed to taking things from positive to positive. But that's in itself. In AA, like it's almost like saying like an unhealthy alcohol isn't bad. So because someone's used alcohol, abused it for let's say a period of time, whether it's a year or 10 years, a decade, they've made themselves bad towards that thing. So yeah, maybe, I mean, some people don't do alcohol. Some people go to AA, they take the stuff, they're there for a couple of years and they never drink alcohol again. Some people go back, some people relapse. Many people relapse. In my mind, the way I would go about things, it seems unbalanced, because we're talking about the word balance. It seems unbalanced to say I will never drink another ounce of alcohol in my life again. That seems unbalanced. That's an extreme in one direction, whatever it might be. Now, some people use porn addiction as well. Some people who are been induced to porn addiction for 20 years, you're gonna have to wean off of it for, I don't know, let's say a random time, let's say 3 years of not watching porn to maybe rebalance yourself, and then maybe you can start beginning to have yourself a healthier balance with it. Now, that does not mean that you go across the board and say, I'll never do this again. No, because that seems imbalanced. Now, to you, it's gonna be like, well, why am I gonna do something again when I know I'm so inclined to do it? Like that makes no sense. So some people are willing to be unbalanced in something that they consider as a something that hurts them. So again, I think in a perfect world, if you're healthy, I think there's a balance between, let's say, the porn, the balance between the alcohol, and the balance between things you do in day-to-day life. But at the same time, if you've abused something so much that you need to take 10 years off or 5 years off or 3 years off from doing whatever it might be to then be able to have a healthier balance with it, I would advise myself and people around me more to do that than to be cold turkey, never smoking again, never watching porn again, never doing this again. And I always tell people who tell me, like, I quit this or I quit that, whatever it might be, I'm like, don't say I quit, just say I stopped. Because if you say you quit, you bring yourself this shame and guilt automatically that if you ever do it again for the rest of your life, which most of us, when we say, we don't understand how long that might be. If you ever do it again, you have just transgressed of something that you said you're going to do, which is going to bring in shame, it's going to bring in guilt, it's going to bring in self-down, and you're going to start questioning yourself. So every single time people tell me, I'm going to say, don't say you quit, just say you stopped. Like I've smoking for 10 years. There are periods where I smoke for 2 months. There are periods where I stop smoking for 6 months. And then I smoke again for 3 months when I'm traveling, let's say, or when I'm in a social event and someone pulls out a cigarette, I might take one. But then sometimes I stop doing it. I don't smoke for 6 months. There have been the longest period I went without smoking was 2 years. In fact, I didn't want it. I did want it, but at the same time, it was like, no, I don't want to be smoking at this time. So I feel like that was a much healthier balance than if I would have told myself, like many people did, stop, quit. I'm going cold turkey, and then you transgress it, and then that's where all the shame and all that stuff kind of comes in. So I think I went on a lot there, but yeah.
Right, I think it's a powerful, when you said I'd like to understand more what you mean by everything comes from the negative, like an example of that. And also, what's the most interesting is this powerlessness, like admitting to powerlessness to your addiction, right? And to me, what sounds like your insistence is like, I'm not powerless. I have power over my addiction. And what I don't want is for I want to be able to have power over my addiction. I don't want to get to the point where my addiction has power over me again, right? Like to the point where, oh, I'm smoking so much that I can't quit, or I'm drinking so much and it's ruining my life again. And I think often with alcohol, the people who make it into the 12 steps, like they showed up there to some degree, they are recognizing that they need some help, that this substance is negative. They've linked enough of the negativity in their life to this substance, and they realize that if I were to just get my handle on the substance, this particular substance, then I would be able to clear up my emotional capacities, or my I would be able to clear up my ability to function in the world in a way that I would find maybe more pleasurable or at least not miserable. And like, so to me, that's like a given if you're showing up to an NA meeting or an SAA meeting. Like, I guess I've never had the balls to get up and show up to one of those meetings because I've never been willing to say I'm powerless. Like, I could do this on my own type deal. Like, I've never shown up to a meeting ever. And yeah, but like, I do think to a degree there's a powerlessness. So to me, it doesn't sound like balance. Like, because balance, like you said, is no, but in general, it doesn't seem like the aim is balance. Because I think it's a healthy relationship with, a healthy relationship with. So I think there are some people who they've come to this, at least where they're at in life, they can't. The only relationship they can imagine with alcohol is a non-existent one, right? In order for it to be healthy, like, so that might be true for somebody. And I would say porn. I would say that that's a substance or a process addiction that there is no. Like, in theory, you could use it in a way that's not so detrimental, but I don't know if
You
there's a
watch it with your
healthy.
wife, or you're never with
I
your
would.
wife, your girlfriend, your relationship.
There's
She
too
might
much
like it.
evidence. There's too much evidence that's just her addiction. Then
No, it's not
it's
an addiction. It's not addiction for either one of you. If you guys, the things that way some people like to use, sticks and stones and chains, or some people like candles, or some people like playing dominant, non-dominant roles. There's so many different ways to spice it up in the bedroom, right? Some people spice it up through a much vanilla way they use it, in that world. A vanilla way of spicing up in the bedroom is watching porn together. That's a vanilla way.
right.
It's like it's like
I'm
a
skeptical as to whether or not there's any evidence or any reality in which that is actually healthy for the relationship. I'm skeptical. Like,
That's
I
but
see
that's
that,
but
that
that, that
people talk about it,
that's
but I'm
not a
skeptical.
that'll go back to the people who they are. If the guy's coming in with a 5-year porn addiction or she's coming in with a 12-year porn addiction, then one of them is using it with the other. But
Right. I don't think there's anybody without a porn addiction to some degree in this world. I mean, a dopamine addiction. I don't think that there's anybody without that, and porn is the ultimate source of dopamine. Um,
let's go to the
it's
question then.
free, it's
What's
accessible,
considered
and it's super
balance?
powerful.
What's considered a balance? That you never do it, or I think we both agree that never doing anything is almost like not balanced. You might not want to do it, but to say I'll never do it, that seems a bit like aggressive almost. Like, I guess an example of something I don't like. I don't like, I don't know, whatever something not coming into my mind. But to say something I'm never gonna do something again, something you've already done to say I'll never do it again, that seems unbalanced. So that's the question: what's considered balance? Like with alcohol, is it once a week? Like obviously we're not gonna get to a point where it's like, oh, it's this, and the other. But like, what would you consider a balance? I think in therapy, like something that someone needs therapy, whatever they're going through, is simply something that inhibits your ability to live day-to-day life. Waking up, working your 8 hours, 7 hour days, making lunch, going to the gym, taking care of your family, your kids, your wife, like that, whatever it is, it could be whatever it is. It could be packing. It could be like I have an addiction to packing suitcases that I was ready to go. If that is inhibiting to like your day-to-day life, that is considered like something that you need to deal with. So I think the inhibitor of what's considered like I would say not good for us, what I would use as the line. I'm curious to see what your line would be. My line would be simply like, is it inhibiting you? Is it blocking your ability to live your day-to-day normal life?
Yeah, so I would say that it would be the baseline. Like, if like, that, I mean, at the very least, you don't want to be engaging with a process addiction or a substance addiction in a way where it's noticeably messing up your life to yourself and others and making your life more difficult. But I do think there's a certain amount of there's a higher aim than to just have a life that is there's a metaconscious level of living, way of living that maybe it's impeding my ability to dig deeper into who I am. Maybe it's impeding my ability to release ego boundaries. I think to the degree of which I'm using something in order to disconnect from reality, um, like versus am I using it to be able to connect better? And if there's a way for you to frame it in a way that is allowing you to connect better, so for instance, alcohol, I think a healthy person should be able to have red wine at Kiddush and should be able to have a Purim Suda where they get inebriated, right? I think that's built into our system and it's built into our structure. Um, I would say it depends on what you're using to. Whether okay, so like we're doing it with alcohol, but we can do it with we can do it with, I don't know, anger versus apathy. We can do it with like we can try to find every single spectrum of emotion or character trait that we have that we could possibly express. We could try to find balance, and it's going to be really hard to find a balancing act. Like I drew this, like, so there's like the pendulum swing. It's all backwards, but like these are spectrums, and so for me it's balance, and I think a better word is appropriate or integrated. And so there's the appropriate application or the appropriate use of a substance or the appropriate use of an emotion or the appropriate, like trying to integrate it. So the analogy I really like is, let's say you have a pen. I'm going to balance the pen on my hand, right? Where's the balancing point? It's a little hard. I'm going to find balance. It's rolling. I'm having a lot of trouble finding balance. Okay, I found balance. That took a little bit. Right? We're all balanced. Okay, but
Something changes, you have to adjust.
It was better. If something changes, you have to adjust. So you have to find balance. Okay, pick it up again. So now I'm going to balance the pen again. Wonderful. Now I want to use it. Shit. And you just can do that over and over again. So that's why it feels so helpless running around life trying to find balance. Find a way to pick up the pen, put it in your hand, and you can learn how to use it. And so all of these things are tools, and they're either serving me at this time or they're not serving me at this time. And that's why to my addictions, I have to say thank you. Like there's a thing, Ellie Nash discusses how you have to say, right, and I think Gabor Mate as well. You have to like look back, like what did your addiction provide you, right? Like, and you must have had a reason that you did it. Like, and you look at people, it's like, oh, like you just listen to people's addiction stories, and like it always played a vital role in their life. It almost allowed them to live. With our late friend Aaron Hertz, right? Like there was a certain, like, how could you, like, he's suffering so much, right? Like how could you ask him to not use substances to dull that experience, like the amount that he's suffering? So I don't know, my addiction has allowed like a certain amount of, it allowed me to be balanced enough and keep my levels keeled enough to be able to not totally fall apart in my life. While if I didn't have them, maybe I would have fallen apart, and who knows what falling apart would have looked like. And now maybe I'm more ready to step back from my addictions, literally just say no and see what happens. All the anxiety, I'm ready. I feel strong enough and ready enough to see what happens when all the anxieties that hit me, when I'm not escaping and I'm disconnecting. Like if I just don't disconnect, and then create. Don't disconnect, create. And so for me, creating means writing at the very least. And that's but I don't think I think I might have fallen apart. I don't know if I would have been strong enough to do that 5 years ago, or 2 years ago, or even 6 months ago. And like almost like my past since COVID, and then the physical health stuff, like my body literally yelling at me, like, you need to take a break, you need to turn inwards and get your physical and mental health in check, because you're surviving, but it's not going to work for that much longer. And it forced me to stop, right? I was in pain and I was suffering, and I had to figure out why, and I had to go to doctors, and I had to get surgeries, and I had to, all that type of stuff. And then all the organizing structures kind of fell apart along with COVID and new choices, and it's very easy to, but like, if I'm going to look at that and then reinterpret the negativity, reinterpret the resentment, reinterpret all of the suffering, the only way to do that is to experience it and pay attention to it and maybe share it. And I think that's what, like, accepting a degree of powerlessness. and that also accepting that maybe I would be okay and that I don't need to balance and integrate watching porn like into my life. I do need to balance and integrate watching TV because I love TV, I love art, I love creativity, I love movies. I do need to integrate smoking weed, and I don't see that like because it has its time and it has its place and it has its utility. I would like to integrate using psychedelics. I would like to integrate healthy sex in my relationships, like those are all like picking the battles is which things we'd like to integrate into our lives and which ones we maybe we're better off just saying no to. Like the Jew who says no to pork, he didn't figure out a way to integrate pork into his life. Like that type of thing.
It's interesting. I remember a good friend of mine one time told me that it's impossible to not trust yourself because the act of not trusting yourself, look at that smile. The act of not trusting yourself is a trust in not trusting yourself. So it's an impossibility. And a good friend told me that. And it's helped me out in many ways, many more ways than he actually knows. And it's applicable across the board. And I think that's one of the things when we initially talked about, I feel powerless over my addiction. What? Like you have to have power to feel powerless over something. It's the exact same, like, catch 22 type thing. To have the power to then bring yourself powerless, that means you have the power to not feel powerless and then deal with it. Um, and I mean, just hearing you, like, talk about yourself, kind of like, 5 years ago, you didn't have the strength to do this, or you wouldn't have the ability to do this. I think all of it, like, it comes to a deep sense of trust within yourself. Like, I don't do things traditionally. I know that about myself. Whether an upbringing thing, I'm sure it is, but I just don't do it. It's almost like you tell me to don't look in the box. I'm looking in the box. Like, I need to figure out, why can I look in the box? Trailblazer, like, by heart. Like, I need to do something experiential. I think we're both very experiential learners. Now, it has its great stuff and it has its negative stuff. The negative stuff is that we have to do things ourselves. Like what might take someone just like reading like a chapter of a book of someone else who experienced something and just understanding and be like, okay, I'm not gonna start doing this because I'm gonna get lost in it. No, no, no. We're like, no, 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 no. I need to do this myself. I will be able to do this myself. But that's the way we learn. At the same time, the pro of it is that we get to delve into things very deeply. And yeah, we'll feel the emotions of it. We'll feel the being thrust around in it, but we will live in it and we will take something out of it. And one thing that you mentioned was a quote that Nietzsche said. And I've been looking for this quote. I remember looking at it in yeshiva and we were literally dorming in the same exact room, which is crazy, by the way, man, that we literally like had a 150 square foot room with four people in it. It was a sick room. Our porch was larger than our bedroom. But one of the quotes that Nietzsche says was, he's like, there's two ways of taking despair or uncomfort. And he's like, both of them are viable ways of going about it. One of them is like, I have a discomfort, sucks. I'm going to blame it on someone else. I'm going to figure out why I had discomfort. You can always find someone to blame. There will never be a shortage of people to blame. So you blame the right people, and it's a way of dealing with it. You can blame the right people, and it's not your fault anymore. You can ease off the pain a little bit, and you can go ahead and be successful and do what you need to do. It's a way of doing it. It's not a bad or a good way. It's a way of dealing with something. Blame others, take your life, move forward, and keep it going. The other way is to recognize that no, the very thing that I'm struggling with, the very thing that I have an issue with, is what's going to bring me to where I need to go. And it's like a blessing, like you're saying, Eli Nash, Ellie kind of spoke on your podcast with him. It's a blessing. Like, be blessful for the fact that you're dealing with this thing. We also have the idea, I don't know where we have this idea from, but I have it roaming in my head since I was 6 years old, where we're told, I'm sure you've been told this, where we're told that like if you take all your problems and put it on a desk and you see everyone else take all their problems and put it on their desks, you'd be like, okay, let me take my problems back, like let me take all that shit back. I could do like, oh, like I have the problem with porn. Okay, I mean this guy's thinking about taking his life. This guy's thinking about his parents, his mom, his brother, his sister, his money. Who knows? You'll take everything you have right back and deal with your own stuff. But I think ultimately these things that come down to two things. I think one thing that you've made it very clear in our talks for the past year and a half was that you cannot trust yourself. Not only can you not trust yourself because you need to trust yourself, but you can't. Like you don't have the ability to not trust yourself. And if you are not trusting yourself, you're gonna put yourself in a bad situation on the simple fact that you just don't have the balls, as Mendel would say it, or the confidence, or the ideas, or the ability to gain your own self trust. I think once having self trust, let me just segue into this as well. So being that I don't do things traditionally, the only way to not do things traditionally, which do work, it's not that they don't work. Again, these things are not about working and not working. There are different ways of going about doing things. Traditional ways, you go to school, you go to college, you do this, you think like this, you get this idea, you have this family, you move along this way. It works, and people are very happy in that field. The only other way to not do traditional, but be more of an outcast, be more of a rebel with a purpose, the only way to do that is if you have deep trust in yourself. To have the right morals, to have the right intentions, to have the right meanings, to figure it out as you go along. That is the only thing you need. If you're going to start your own business, start your own podcast, marry who you want, have different philosophies, send your kids to different schools than your parents or your community does. The only way, the only way to do that is to have deep trust in yourself. You don't might not have the answers. People might sit down with you and ask you, okay, so how'd you make this decision? How'd you come back to America without having a degree and start doing sales and build your own company after 3 years? How'd you plan it out? I didn't. No one does. You just trust yourself that you'll figure it out. And the deep trust is answers all the questions that you go along with. So I think that deep trust is the people who are willing to like go outside of the structural fundamental ways that life kind of progresses. Not that it doesn't work. It works for many amount of people, and it can work, and it's healthy, and it's beautiful, and it can be. But for those people, if you want to go the other way around, kind of red pill, blue pill, you want to take the red pill, the only thing you need is deep trust in yourself that you'll figure everything and anything out.
Right. I do sometimes wish that I could take the blue pill. Like I wish that I could. There's definitely like there's a certain amount of envy. Like not even I don't know if it's envy, but like a recognition of like this simplicity of life. Like I've worked with people who work in I've worked in factories before and worked on assembly lines and worked with people everywhere from crackheads and heroin addicts to just blue collar guys who have daughters on their way to the Olympics, like and state champions in swimming, like so like in this, but like this simple life, okay, and they have their truck and they have their Harley and they have like their $45,000 a year with medical insurance covered for the family, and it's simple, and it's to me that's the blue pill. Or they just go and get a job anywhere in sales, and they have their family and they send their kids to school, right, and their kids go to university, like that's the blue pill. There are people who take the blue pill, but they don't really take the blue pill. They're just kind of like holding on to the blue pill to use it, and like they're able to do that. And you said to be a trailblazer, to go out on your own, you need to believe in yourself. I don't think that's the core ingredient. I think it's more of like, I can't not do that. Like I don't have the option in the end of the day to just go along the ivory tower path, like the beaten path. Like I wish I could just follow, but I can't. So even like I wish that I had the self-confidence and the self-trust to go along with it. And I would say to the degree of which I'm feeling stuck is when I'd say healthily, and thank God, like the negative self-talk voice has gotten me farther than the positive self-talk voice, where it's gotten to me where I am now. Now I'm ready to see what the hell the positive self-talk voice, the self-confident voice, like where that could bring me, and could he win, right? Like, and could he beat and be more persuasive and make Mendel, whatever the sum total Mendel is, live according to that voice? Like it is like we have two voices in our head, like we always do. If you're thinking, you're having conversations with yourself. As Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson said, and quote, and they give me a shout out, thinking aloud. That's the danger of a podcast, is it's you're thinking aloud, and Jordan's like, well, that's the amazing thing. He's like, even thinking is just internalized conversation.
Wait, they
right?
gave
Like
you a shout out?
basically, they literally said thinking, like a podcast is thinking aloud. So I made a
Oh,
clip,
I saw that.
and I made a clip of that, because that's the motivation for my podcast. Like what they described, what Jordan described, what Joe described, of this two people playfully exploring ideas and having a give and a take, and the ability to maybe criticize, the ability to come back, and we don't really know where it's going. It's evolving as it goes. I introduced a topic that I had discussed 2 hours before, but other than that, it's maybe been 5% on that target and along that train of thinking. And it just, to me, this is what whatever this is what a good conversation is. Like, how would we codify it? Like, this is a good conversation. And So I do think I don't think I could go down that beaten path, like, or at least I couldn't have. And now I'm like wondering, could I now? Like, should I now go get my degree and see what it's like to become an MSW or a psychology, or do I just figure out the internet way and how to create my way to it and write my books and make my podcasts and then eventually do lectures and teach and all that stuff, but with zero degree. I don't have a rabbinic degree. I spent 7 years in yeshiva, have zero degree to show for it. I
What about all the
have,
years in elementary, high school, middle school?
yeah, I do have degrees to show for that. I do have a high school
Ah,
diploma.
true.
Um, as far as degrees go, I'm like, if you're filling out an application or a job to do like highest level of education, like it's high school, right? That's like officially, right? Like, but that's ridiculous to just say I have the equivalent of a high school level of education. I've been educating myself every moment of every day since then. And now I do wonder whether or not I could go back to the beaten path
What's the beaten
and
path?
the university degree, and job and income,
What
and
path are you on right now then?
I'm not in school. I'm trying to figure out my path. I don't. I like. I've been on the path of trying to figure out my path. The beaten path is not to get a family and a wife before you have a job. That's not the beaten path. It's the opposite of the beaten path. Um, like, and maybe it's the beaten path for some, but I'm not that person who it's a beaten path for. For me, it's not a beaten path. Um, I've done
How
all, like
long
you said,
ago?
I've done all these recreational things, normal things. My life is totally normal. Like I work right now, I'm filling in at the vape shop, dude, and I love it so much.
I can see this smile on your face, Mendel.
And
Like
it's
you
so
seem
simple.
happy. No, you seem happier. Like one is what you're literally considering that. Let's say there's two paths. You're literally calling one the beaten path. Not that I will be beaten path. That I've already been fucking beaten on this path. You know, like I've already gotten the shit kicked out of me on this path. Do I go back to the shit kicking? I mean, we know people, and us ourselves, we like pain. Many times we like pains. We prefer feeling something than nothing at all. But you're literally describing one as the beaten path, and the other path where it's like I'm just doing podcasts. I'm getting shout outs. I'm talking to friends. I'm at the vape shop. I have a smile on my face. What's what's the two choice? I'll tell you why. Because the beaten path is the path where you're supposed to be on, the path of
And
success.
there's security there, and
Oh,
like,
very
okay,
nice
so
warm security. Ooh,
if
nice
there
and
is,
warm.
because if I just had a skill set, hard, I don't have any, dude. I'm trying to write CVs, dude. How the fuck do I write a CV, dude? What do I put on my damn CV? Oh, I did school for 1 year and dropped out. Oh, I got a 99% GPA, which was impossible. Like, I have to tell, like, there's a huge awesome story for each thing on the meaningless and like. I, where I forget who says it. I forget which movie it is, but I think it's Robert De Niro who says, "You know what college is? You know what university is? It's so you can show somebody that you showed up to a single place for 4 years and worked hard enough to get through it. That's what university
That's
is.
value.
That's value, showing that I could at least be relied upon and I am at least committed. And so for me, I don't
Okay.
have the value of being. I got married at 20 and I'm still married and I'm still working on it, but that doesn't okay, good for you. But like people don't realize how good for me that is. Um,
That translates into being able to have amazing conversations with people. So it does translate, and it's translating what you're doing right now, and people can see it in making a podcast because that is
right.
getting married, as as I think it was Nietzsche also says this. He says like when you are selecting a wife, select someone you can have a conversation of 80 years with because that's what it is. It's a conversation. You're having an
Yeah.
80-year long conversation. So if you're able to sustain a conversation with your wife, how long have you been married, Mendel? 8 years?
Almost seven.
Almost 7 years. So you have had a 7-year conversation. Yes, and because of that, you have the ability now, because you started talking with someone every single day for so much longer, for so long, you're now able to come on a podcast and have meaningful conversations with people, with cool people. You know, whether it's Eli Nash, whether it's the other Bayman in Israel, whoever it might be, you have a platform now where with a name, with Instagram followers, with people around you. Like this is the outgrowth of getting married earlier and having a 7-year a successful 7-year conversation. And of course, there's ups and downs, Mendoza. No one's denying that.
How do I
But
make
the
money
point,
though? I need to make money now. I
wait,
need to
wait,
make money
you'll get
today.
there.
Today, no, today. Like in or not today. And
Yeah, you
I
work
do
at a
need
vape
money
shop.
today.
You work at a
Yeah,
vape shop. You
but
work at a
that
vape
brings
shop.
in very like
It brings in something, you're working. The idea is that you're working to gain money. Everything else will be built off from there. It'll be built. And yet, like, I mean, listen, when you're married, your wife has to be on board because like financial issues in a marriage can be destructive. I'm talking as if I know. I don't know. Just from
No,
what
you
I've
can
heard,
imagine
I'm
though,
not
but
married.
easy enough. It's easy enough to imagine why. It's not crazy.
It's a
A
very easy
woman,
thing, right? It's a very easy thing to do 'cause it's
women,
just money.
women
It's
need their men to provide
yes,
them with security, both physically and emotionally. Like
yes. Money is
that is a
very, very
need.
important. If your wife's on, yes. So I mean, number one thing when it comes to like choosing the non-beaten path where you get hit in the butt is your wife has to be on board with you taking the unsullied path, the road less traveled on. She, because you guys are, in certain parts of your life, you guys are one, so she must be on board. Otherwise, it'll be destructive to both everyone. Because you'll have another beaten path. The wife path will become the beaten path, So she's got to be on board, obviously. I don't know what the interrelationships between you guys are, and if you guys talk about this or not, I'm sure you have, but if she's like somewhat on board, like I'll give you like some time to figure it out, then you're good to go. But it's also not even about her. You yourself want to feel like a lot of a man's meaning or self-confidence coming by the ability to create wealth. It's a huge self-confidence thing. Like, if you're making X amount a year, like you're making $50,000 a year, you're making $400,000 a year, you're making 2.5 million, like you don't think your ego will start playing into that? Of course it will. Like you will feel a different person, especially when you hear all your friends are making 150. You'll feel 10 times better. You can make $500,000, and if you surround yourself with the six friends that are making $800,000, you're not gonna feel as good as that. And you go hang out with your friends that are making 150, you'll be like, oh great, this is much better. But that's on its own. That's our judgment and our who we relate ourselves to. Um, when you were talking, the first thing after you started talking about like the first thing you mentioned was after talking about the two different paths was that um, it's a on the other path like the let's say the standard path, it's very comfortable, it seems very nice, like and it is very nice, it is very comfortable, not because it seems like it, because it is. Like it is very comfortable to be going on that path and kind of have things slightly more set for you and have an idea where you're going and all that. And as you're writing it, I was going to tell you something, but you're going on a flow, so I just wrote it down here in our notes. And this is the quote that I came up with: the grass is always greener on your side if you're just willing to look down. It is. The whole ability that we're always looking at other people's side, for you to in the first place the line that we say it's always green on the other side, you can only get to the point where you're saying that quote of the grass is always on the other side if you're looking over the fence over to the other side. Stop looking at the other side. Look down. Look at your grass. Oh, it needs water. Okay, here's some water. Oh, you need sunlight. Let me remove this massive tent that I put up for no reason. Get the sunlight. Get the water. Oh, you need to be dug a little bit so you can go deeper. Okay, let me dig in. So that's like my quote. The grass is always greener on your side if you're just willing to look down and take care of your side. And it will be greener. How many more? The exact same way we do the example, like you put your problems, you'll take your problems back. If it's true in that sense, it also has got to be true within the way you can create in life. What you are able to create in life, you will feel better about than what whoever else created it. And we know this to be true in the kitchen. You can order a steak from whoever it might be, and it's delicious. It is the best thing you've ever had. But it's not about when you create your own steak, when you go out and you do this and you prepare your own steak and your own grill thing, it's not that it tastes any better. The chef probably does taste better, but you created it. You made it. It's yours. It's more meaning behind it. The meaning is what gives it the taste that's much better. So, yeah, the grass is always greener on your side if you just want to look down and take care of your side.
Yeah, amen. That's a clip. I think this is a good model. I think it's so good, right? Like, basically, I mean, we have the thing, we show up with something that's on our mind that we want to talk about. And and this could be, this is like, I get like, as a creative person, like, how do I label this? I have a podcast. I don't want to create multiple podcasts, but like, there's like, and you're not my co-host, but you're my repeated co-host, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're not there for every conversation, but and it would be fun to invite people to this conversation, like our friends. Just invite somebody in on our Sunday night chats every once in a while. And it would be because the people who we'd like to have conversations with. I think that this is a sustainable and easy enough way to be consistent about posting, right? Because there is a value to being consistent towards something. And realizing that I'm not going to be always consistent when it comes to foreign guests and new guests, because I don't always want to be consistent with them, but I do want there to be some consistency. Uh, just even for algorithmic sakes, like it's
Like Gary Vee says, post like something a day at least, no?
right. Well, there's daily content. YouTube, no, Mr. Beast posts once a week. Um, YouTube wants you to post once a week, and then Reels he posts daily. But all right, so
Right.
Reels are 60-second content or 90-second content.
And we've done that too before. We did this for I don't know, we did this for like what 8 months basically. Oh, not video chat like this, but on the phone, just getting our ideas out there, just talking, like kind of like meshing our like online relationship, kind of speak, like talking, like getting a conversation, like letting each other talk, stopping the other, like getting deeper, calling each other on our bullshit, and then we brought Kian. Remember Kian? Like kind of brought Kian, and then like yeah, like now this is like our next step where we're taking it to video form. We're both comfortable on video, talking, audio, saving it, recording it. This is like the next form. Like it only grows from here, man. There's only one way to go. It's
And
to
I think but
continue.
you're perfect because it's good for you too. Because you also want to get into the coaching. You
It's
also want to
so
get
good for me.
into. So I do like you're a partner on this journey, not just a guest. That's how I view it.
Of course, dude. I remember when I first called you a year and a half ago. I'm like, Mendel, I'm decided I'm gonna become a mentor, and I need you to tell me what you want to be mentored in, because you're gonna be my mentee. And you're like, okay, like okay, like I'll help you out with this like
I said
mentorship
I want my
journey.
podcast. My
You're
podcast
on
was
your
the thing I want
podcast.
to be
There we
mentored in.
go. Exactly. And
That
this
was the
is
thing we
like,
chose.
it's like my favorite thing is like I remember when I went to therapy, like, and like I was like, I was in a bad place, like coming out for 4 years in yeshiva, having zero life skills, and like just zero life skills to deal with anything emotionally, especially anything emotional, because we didn't delve into emotions in yeshiva. It wasn't about that, So,
Yeshiva was always like, what are emotions? I don't know what emotions are. What do you mean by
oh my God.
feelings? Like that, but by the way, best thing in the world because obviously he knows what emotions are and obviously he knows what feelings are, but he's talking to a bunch of people who all they've ever had is
As
impulses
emotion.
and emotions and gave us this thing called the intellect and the seichel or consciousness that allows us to reflect back on wait, what is an emotion, what is a feeling, what is it telling me, where does it come from, like why is it happening, and then like and our mind is like, to use our minds to move our hearts as opposed to our hearts necessarily to move our minds. It is a two-way street, but having the mind, heart, and body in line, to me, that's balance. That's integration. Um, and so, thank God I had somebody who kicked my ass into realizing, like, you think, you don't really think, and like, no, I really think,
Yeah.
and then having to prove it, and then by proving it, like, it took a while, but like it
It was a
happened, and
mechanism.
then those are mechanisms, and it was and it was thank God for whether or not it was meant to be a kick or whether it was like no, we actually believe there's no feelings. It's almost irrelevant. Um, it's but because it got to me, it got me, and it got us. In my opinion, we went through it for 3 years. It has to have shaped us in some significant way, and it can't be all bad.
100%. It's definitely 95% good. Like good, it was, yeah. Yeshiva in itself was a whole thing. But yeah, they taught us to think with our minds, and they taught us the best thing about yeshiva, and I told this to my cats, to Rebbeim there. I was like, is like you guys just gave us tools. Like it was just a thinking tools to then be applied throughout life, and I use these tools every single day. Whether it's work, business, life, philosophy, morals, you use these tools to think about thinking. It's the first time like they made you conscious of your thoughts. That's what they do. Like it was a very conscious place, very very conscious, like hyper conscious, to a point where like you like everything you do like has like you know has meaning, has purpose, has ideas. Everything needs to be like thought out well. And it for sure trained our mind, like 4 years of being somewhere where it's like it was pure intellectualism, pure thinking, pure mind, pure, like the thinking part of it. But I forgot why I brought up yeshiva.
Well, is there anything you think was that you is there a tool that you got that you wish you didn't get maybe or was misused? And is there a tool that you feel like they should have given you at yeshiva or you wish they had given you
That's what I was going
that
to
they
talk
didn't?
about, right? Right. Yeah, tool for I think it was a lot of the relationship, a lot of the relationship with with some of the mentors there was a relationship where you walk along the path that they advise you to go on, and if you don't, then you're cut off. Um, if you're not kind of generally following the path that they see for you, then the relationship doesn't exist anymore. It was very, yeah, a lot of the relationship was based off like the characters that were there and like the direction in which the relationship for you to go on. And if you decide to go on a different path, that wasn't quite there. And I went through that. Thank God, 3, 4 years after that, I was able to, reestablish relationship with the people back there in a healthy mechanism, even though I chose my own path. Um, but I came out. My point was gonna say I came out of yeshiva with after 4 years of being like in a school of morals and ideas, philosophy of Torah, of mitzvot, of being together, of yichud, of like joining with forces. And I came out in like complete depression. I came out because I just sat down like, what do I have? Like I just have my mind. Like I don't have any actual tools to deal with emotions, which was a huge thing I didn't realize I had. Um, and my point when I was initially going to say all this in the first place, well, I'm just going to go back to your question. Your question was, what kind of tools do I think I got that that I wish I didn't get?
Like, yeah, dogmatic tools. Like you kind of explain some of it where maybe the tools were conditional. Maybe that was a problem
Right.
you
The
had, like
relationship
meaning the relationship.
was
Right. So
conditional,
it's
yes.
right. So yeshiva is not just about giving you tools, and maybe they viewed it too much about just giving you
Tools,
tools. And if you're
correct.
not willing to use, and as soon as they give you tools or they sense that, these are powerful tools, and if you're going to use them in the way that we don't prescribe, we don't want to take responsibility for you because you're maybe a little too dangerous. So I think there's some of that in our
Yes.
specific institution. Because they were powerful tools. They're
Very powerful. Mental, they were very powerful tools.
very powerful tools, and like scary. Like, and I don't know. There was the line that we were all taught, like, "I'm here to ruin your life forever," and like there's a certain amount of awareness, a conscious awareness of like how everything is meaningful, how everything could be meaningful, and the question is whether or not I'm engaging or not engaging, and if I'm not engaging, then it's only me who loses, right? Like it's not anybody else. So I think the narrow-mindedness came from the engaging being limited to engaging in the yeshiva relationship. Um, I do think by being by virtue of the tools being given, which were individualistic, and by being the creativity, clarity, like the quote in our Rosh Yeshiva's office is like I decided to go down the road less traveled by Robert Frost, the road less traveled, so those being right, this is where our whole conversation was like it's almost too in line with our personality, and maybe we needed more tools for being normal, like I don't know, or like being able to connect to others, like in a community setting, going to a shul and being okay with a shul, like
Yes.
and so like and we could blame the institution, but like we said, I think that those are our preconditioned attributes. Like
No,
we
let's
come to
let's
the
let's
table
put
with
blame where
those
blame is due,
attributes.
bud. Let's put blame where blame is due. There's
I never fit into a shul. I never fit into a community. I never fit into where my house. I never fit in anywhere. So
But
like to
there's one way of
blame.
there's one place to not fit in, and there's another time of saying this is incorrect. Not fitting in is fine, but it saying incorrect is different. And what I was going to mention is I wrote an over here called monopoly of information. That was the most destructive thing in yeshiva. And I tell every single person, and I've advised people to go there, and I still do. I still tell people to go to the yeshiva, but the only thing I tell them to be weary of is the monopoly of information. The second you say a pshat, an idea, a thought, a moral, a philosophy, whatever it might be, and then you follow up that theory, which could be beautiful and amazing, intellectual, and it could be the right one, if you follow up with that thing, like where else would you hear such a story like this? Who else is giving you such great ideas like this? Or you hear like, nah, don't listen to that one, or nah, don't listen to this one. He was over this isser. He made this mistake in life. He has done this. Don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. That was by far the most destructive thing. In the teaching that I recognize, that was by far the worst. Like you do not have a monopoly of information. And the beautiful thing about the way that yeshiva, our institution, was set up is that it wasn't that. there was multiple characters that all thought different things. It wasn't all of them doing that stuff. And I remember there were people in the institution who told me this very direct thing. The words they use are like, there's many different flavors. You're eating one flavor. There are many different flavors. And not only that, the more flavors you eat, the more you might appreciate the flavor that you had. So the more flavors that I did taste of philosophy, of thought, of morals, of ideas, the more actually I started appreciating more of what I learned in those 4 years in that institution. Because I realized like, okay, wow, this was actually a great path that I identify with morally, philosophically, ideologically, emotionally. But we only want to recognize that once you try other flavors, once you learn some other stuff. So the person who studies law and he's got a doctorate in law, he went for 12 years to become a doctorate in law, but he's never practiced a day of law in his life. It doesn't help. Like, so you had the information, you have to use it as well. But one of the most destructive thing I tell people to go there. I still have some advice for the right people that I think could go there and could benefit from that institution. But the only thing I preface it with is there's the don't get sucked in to the monopoly of information. There's no such thing as a monopoly of information. There's no monopoly of thoughts or ideas or philosophy or what is the correct way of learning something or the incorrect way of learning something. Learning by itself is learning, and there's no the end goal. A quote that I heard in a book by David Dawkins called "Letting Go," and it was simply is two quotes. One is like I prefer having questions that don't have answers than answers that can't be questioned. And the other quote, I'm paraphrasing the second quote, but the second quote goes on the lines of like, Lord, save us from the ones that have the answers. Save us. God, please save us from the ones that have the answers. Because the one that have the answers, the one that say, this is the answer, this is the answer, this is it. Think no more, that is destructive. Because that's not the point. The point is not to get to an answer. The point is to question, to get closer to what way you can apply it and then live it through life. The answer is not the end all be all. So many of the stuff that we learned in that institution was this is the answer. The most amazing thing about the institution was that all the answers that we did come out to was that they're all kind of like ecocentric. They were all on the same theme, which was so impressive to me. It was just the minds, the intellect that go into like, creating a central unit of thought that applies across all of Torah was amazing in itself, but it's not a monopoly. It's a way. It's not the only way. And the answers were a lot more given value to than the questions were, which is another thing in itself. Again, going back to the tools,
I
I'm
found
happy I
the
went to the
opposite. I
tools.
found what I got there was that your questions are significant. Like your challenges are real. Like the fact that you questioned all this nonsense your entire life, like kudos to you. Like, and that there is a more compelling, more beautiful path, and it give me one, right? So obviously people have a tendency to hold on to one that is more beautiful than they had before, and is more valuable than they had before, and is more empowering than they had before. Like that makes sense that you would want to hold on to it, and obviously for maybe 2 years that'd be good for you, but you need to also, before you leave, be sure like, now put this to work, right? Like study the Torah, study the world, and figure out your unique place in it. Don't be so cynical. And yes, we taught you cynicism, or skepticism is very healthy, but don't turn it into cynicism. Right? And so that goes into being balanced, right? Am I a skeptic or am I a cynic? And a skeptic is a great person to be. A cynic, a horrible person to be. And so I would say there's like an open optimist, I guess would be the word, like you kind of open to everything, and then there's somebody who's is totally cynical towards everything, and then the healthy place to be is the skeptic. That's the integrated balance point between the two, and but like it's easy for me to have like my intelligence, like it's important for me to realize that sometimes the thing that I think is intelligent, or the reason I won't go to a 12-step program, or I won't surrender, is because I'm not willing to let go of my belief that I'm holding on to so dearly. So that's almost like a cynicism towards every other idea. And so recognizing for me that my tendencies towards cynicism, right? Because I have a tendency towards cynicism due to trauma, due to all these things. And I think it's incredible that after, right, you said you were at yeshiva and then you left, and it took 3 years, 4 years, but that ability to go back and find a relationship that works for you with those people, a healthy one, or put them in a healthy pocket in your brain, as opposed to like, who are these people that ruined my life, or who are these people that saved my life, and like that war between the two. And just having a healthy relationship. And it took me years growing up Chabad, right? Like my trajectory was like Chabad, like this is like caring, challenging, questioning, all that type of stuff, being rejected and dejected and insulted and displaced due to my challenging, due to my questioning, and then stepping out and then recognizing that Judaism was not something like, and stepping out into the modern Orthodox world, and okay, there's a version of Judaism that isn't that, so at least Judaism I don't have to throw out. What would that be? And then going to yeshiva, and then learning to intellectualize and rationalize all of the problems I had with my upbringing, and then almost being vehemently, as a caricature against Chabad, when I was at my Pesach Seders and Shabbos meals, like, and disillusioning people to the magical thinking of Chabad and the divinity of the Rebbe and all that type of stuff, and our weirdness and our uniqueness, and being impervious to outside criticism, and everybody's a misnagid, everybody's an opposer, and so like being that person, and then stepping out even further and being able to be like, wait, it's not all bad. There's a lot that I got. There's a lot of who I am that comes from there. What is that? And then finding, okay, I don't have to dress this way, I don't have to look this way, but I can have a healthy relationship with my Chabad self. And so being able to look at our past and reinterpret it and fit it into our story, whether it's our addictions, our traumas, our successes, and write one consistent narrative that I could live according to, and having everything play, like, it's not taking up too much of my mind. It's not taking up too much of my mind, and it's not taking up too little. And yeah, like it's so that's where thinking comes, being able to think or being able to write comes into play. I don't want to be just a skeptic, because then good information and truth doesn't come in, and I don't want to be so open because falsehood comes in, right? So what would I do? So everybody say, oh, you have to be balanced. I'm like, what? So I should let in some good and some bad, and not let in some good and some bad? No. What you do is you open up your cup, you open up your head, you take in, you experience what has to be said, and then you let yourself argue out both points in your head, like in whatever emerges between the argument in your head is going to be the closest thing approximating the truth. Because like in a courtroom, you have a prosecutor and a defendant, and then a judge or a jury. And so the prosecutor's job isn't to find a balanced view, and the defendant's job is not to find a balanced view. It's, I'm going to defend and you're going to attack, and we're going to come up with a judgment that everybody agrees is just, right, and makes sense based off of all the information we had. And that's going to be the truth. And you know what? Somebody might appeal that, and they might go to another court and have a new judgment back and forth, and we're going to come up to something approximating the truth. And that's kind of what we do with all of our thoughts in our head. So just, I think we have to close up, but just to quote Freud to end him introducing his lecture, his 16th lecture, introducing psychoanalysis, psychiatry. So he has this awesome. He says, in paraphrasing, he says, in my previous lectures, I deflected a lot to you because you guys know as much about dreams as I do, and your experience with dreams is as valuable. But when it comes to this, I know more, so I'm not going to open up the floor as much. He says, but do not, however, understand this as an announcement of dogmatic lectures which demand your unconditional belief. That would be a gross misunderstanding. I do not wish to convince you. I am out to stimulate your interests and shake your prejudices. If, in consequence of not knowing the facts, you are not in a position to judge, neither should you believe nor condemn. Listen and allow yourselves to be influenced by what I tell you. One cannot be so easily convinced. at least if he comes by convictions without effort. They soon prove to be valueless and unable to hold their own. He only has a right to conviction. He only has a right to conviction who has handled the same material for many years, and who in doing so has gone through the same new and surprising experiences again and again. But the most important line is, I do not wish to convince you. I'm out here to stimulate your interests and shake your prejudices. And
I'm here to question you.
I'm here to. It's not even just question. Like, I could teach and I could provide you with insight that you don't have, and this is going to be new stuff that nobody else has talked about, right? This is not something that, like, where I've been working on this for years and years and years and developing this for years and years and years. So I'm not asking you to accept anything I'm saying. I'm just asking you, don't believe it nor condemn it if you don't have the tools in order which to judge it. So what most people do is they hear something and they immediately judge it, and they actually didn't have the right or the skill set or the know-how or the know-what to come to a judgment. They should have just been like, I'm not so sure about that, and maybe left it there until later. Instead, we come to these dogmatic conclusions, yes, no, very early on, and we hold on to them. And so I think...
I was going to ask you this before we end. Maybe we could do it for the next time, but is there anything that's good in non-moderation, or is there anything that's good in non-balance? Or does every single thing have to have balance?
No, I would say, like, quite clearly, pork. There's no the healthy, balanced relationship with pork is no pork. Is saying no to pork, and no to pork. The pig, and the healthy relationship with porn is zero porn. And the healthy relationship with sex, though, is good sex in the right context, in the right relationship, with the right goals, with the right amount of conviction, and the right amount of care, and the right amount of compassion. Healthy sex at the right times, and something that might be maybe fentanyl that has its appropriate use, but it's not a balanced one. It's appropriate when you got shot in the leg and you need a painkiller. Maybe, but not more than that.
Tranquilizer.
Yeah. So is there anything that's purely evil or purely good? I think
pork.
Murdering babies is purely evil.
Because you're coming from a religious point of view.
Yeah, I'm saying I believe that the prescriptions given by God there are certain things which He says are not for you, right? Like,
but the same token, like, we know that, like,
another man's wife is never for you.
But that's not a balancing. That's just sex. That's taking sex and unbalancing it, and that's also food. Like, that's taking food and unbalancing it. That's not intrinsically wrong. That's an unbalance. Like, you could take anything. Again, it's like taking. Look at this, by the way. Look how cute. Taking this as a cute adornment thing that my brother got me when he was on a date with his now engaged wife. My brother got engaged, so mazal tov to him. I could throw this and kill someone, or I can have this as a cute little thing on my desk. Like, I'm saying, like, the pork thing is interesting. Because pork, I mean, I can group it into food and be like, yeah, but even from a religious point of view, like, we believe that pork is going to be kosher once Mashiach comes again. We'll all be eating pork or something.
Right. So I'm saying, so there is that. So that would be counterproductive. Or no, pork is actually, you could maybe sell it and make money off of it. And there is a good use of pork.
Right.
And
my friend who had a floss company, they use pig heads to, like, floss, to use, like, the flossing for like electronic floss, so that, because that's like the closest teeth towards a human. So you see, they use a pig that's not for food. It was a Jewish guy, and he doesn't eat pork, and but he bought a massive pig head and just had it in their fridge in their apartment, and they used it to test, like, their prototypes. It's also more of like a general. It's more like an abstract question. Like, is there anything that's not good in balance?
I would say for me, pornography, if we're going to separate that from sex.
Is that from an addiction? Is that because you've been addicted, or because I've been addicted to it as well? Is that because it comes from an addiction point, or is that just because, like, the nature of
it is continuous scrolling, overindulgence. It opens up, by definition, portals to time-wasting, mind-numbing, wasting creative juices, dulling creativity, It does all of those things, and so sometimes I do it and it doesn't feel as bad, but like I mind numbing activities are not good.
Yeah, it's like YouTube scrolling for me too. Like,
Right, but then I don't want to be off YouTube because I want to listen to Jordan Peterson. I want to listen to Andrew Huberman. I want to listen to Joey Rosenfeld. I want to get inspiration for how to make my podcast more attractive. I want to do all those things. So for me, I have a similar feeling with YouTube and a similar feeling with Instagram. There's a certain feeling, everybody knows it when they're on Instagram with intention versus without intention. Like you could be intentional, like, oh, I'm looking, I'm gonna go find somebody, I'm gonna message them, I'm gonna reach out, I'm gonna comment, or you could just be like, nothing's really catching my attention right now. And that moment where you're scrolling and nothing's really catching your attention, you're just jumping to the next thing, it's time to get off. Um, that's for me
so hard
why,
to. They do such a good job of making you want to stay. Like, wow.
right. And maybe for my 10-year-old girl, or my to be 10-year-old girl, there will be at her age, at her time, no social media is the only form of social media that is appropriate, right? Like, let's say, or for sure for my 4-year-old, right? I would say for her at this time, zero social media is the healthiest approach.
I'm pretty sure there was a Harvard review that came out that 13 was considered too young to have social media. TikTok, which is a Chinese company, their maximum allowed time a day for kids under 18, sorry, under I think 13. Oh, no, first of all, kids under 13 don't have TikTok. They're not allowed to download it. You have to be like, I think over like 16. Over 16, the maximum allowed time a day, I think it's like 40 minutes, 40, 45 minutes a day. Only the American version is unrestricted. Only the American version. Because we love indulgence. Indulgence, fuck yeah, give me more of that. You kidding me? More football, more beer, more pizza?
It's the meaning of life is how much decadence and indulgence could I have on my plate, and the worth of my life is measured according to how much decadence and comfort and escapism I could work into my schedule, how much time I could spend on the couch, how much time I could spend on vacation, how much time I could spend not engaged in my life. Um, and that's what we do. We go to work for 8 hours or 10 hours and we shut off and escape. And we're always waiting. The happiest part of the day is when the bell rings and we go to scan out. Uh, like that's what Alan Watts says is the biggest mistake we make in the West is making a distinction between work and play. If you approach work as play and you approach your responsibilities as play and you approach life in a spirit of play, you will yeah, you will reap the benefits, and you won't have to escape your life. You'll just have to how can I make this game better? How can I improve? How can I make it more fun, more engaging, more entertaining, more meaningful, more fused with more vitality? How could I do that? And if there's things that I can't run away from because I have to, the gutter has to get fixed and the dishes have to get done and the laundry needs to be done and the bills do need to be paid. If there's a way for me to take care of everything that needs to be taken care of as playfully as possible, where I don't resent what I'm doing, I don't think that's too much to ask for.
You'd probably get there then. If you think you could, you probably will. If it's too much, then if it was too much, then your mind wouldn't let you go there. It's too much.
And there's times where I'm like, maybe I would just be better off just using the substances to keep myself dull and keep myself neutered, and I'll
Yes,
be able
mental.
to,
I
and I'll
agree.
be, and I'd be able to
Let's do that,
handle
bro.
the
Let's go
mundanity of
back to
life.
Amsterdam.
Just the mundanity of life. Like maybe it's supposed to be mundane, and the secret of life is to find the right substances to use that make you capable of handling your life.
I almost stayed in South America because I chose, it was a very conscious decision. It was like either I stay in South America, I met a beautiful woman there that would have been my wife and whatnot. I would have made work, made life. I could have easily stayed in South America and had a beautiful life and a wife and kids and the whole thing, and be happy too. Don't get me wrong. I would be happy too. And I don't think I was lying to myself. I'd be like, just that. go under the radar, live my life, go on my trips, do the random work, enjoy, be creative, get tattoos, get all the stuff that all the vibes that I've always wanted to do. Conscious decision to easily do it and boom, plug myself in. And then I realized I'm Jewish, and all that went away.
And that
That's
matters
what
to you
being a
for some
Jew
reason.
is, dude. What?
And it matters to you for some reason.
Yeah, that's the only thing I came down to. She wasn't Jewish, so I couldn't. I had a block, and that was it. Like something like I think Nietzsche's one who also said. I don't know why I'm quoting so much Nietzsche today. I don't know what happened,
Freaking
but
wise
Nietzsche.
guy.
But Nietzsche also he blamed that he's like Jews blamed shame and guilt to the world, and it's true. It's true, and in the exact same way, that's what allows us to be today. I found out that the head of the biggest, most prestigious bank in America, Goldman Sachs, is a Yid. Howard something, or I forgot his name. Robert Howard, I don't remember. He's a Yid. He grew up in New York. He's a Yid. He's a Yiddish Cup. I mean, we don't have to start talking about all the Yiddish Cup people around us that are so successful and all that stuff in government, law, and everything, in every single field. That's what you get for being Jewish. You can't settle for mediocrity. And I remember having a conversation with a good friend once, and I did not understand mediocrity. I couldn't understand it. I'm like, how? Like, it messed with my mind. I didn't understand how, like, but you can be more, and you don't want that. Like, and then I realized I'm Jewish. That's the only thing I was able to bring it down to. So,
It's the curse, the
you're the
Jewish
same way,
curse.
Mendel.
It's the Jewish curse. To end, we're gonna sign off after this. Just to read a little bit of Nietzsche, because we're reading Nietzsche. You have the choice. Either as little displeasure as possible, painlessness and brief, or as much displeasure as possible, as the price of growth and of abundance, of subtle pleasures and joys that have rarely been relished yet. Is a tree that is supposed to grow of proud height and dispense with bad weather and storms, misfortune and external resistance, some kinds of hatred, jealousy, stubbornness, mistrust, hardness, and violence do not belong among favorable conditions, without which any great growth, even of virtue, is scarcely possible. Meaning, saying, like, without, there's going to be all the, like, a tree is never going to grow by deciding, I don't want any bad storms, I don't want any bad weather. Like, if it's going to get to its greatest height, it's not going to be inside of a glass room. Okay, and then the button commenting on him, I don't know who he is, but I wrote it down. The most fulfilling human projects appeared inseparable from a degree of torment, the source of our greatest joys lying awkwardly close to those of our greatest pains. We must suffer because we cannot spontaneously master the ingredients of fulfillment.
Meaning that the ingredients to fulfillment is through suffering. Is that what he's saying?
Right, through hard work and toil, at the very least. And the only way you can build those tools is by building them. Those are the ingredients. The ingredients are mindsets, perspectives, and experience and viewpoint. So yeah, looking forward to next week.
I love you, buddy. Good stuff. Good
When
work.
you think about this throughout the week, just take down notes and we'll see where we launch off from based off of somewhere. We'll start somewhere interesting and meaningful and trust that wherever it goes, it'll be good.
We're back. Mendel, we're back. This is our third week in a row. It's it. It's already Chazaka. We are back, dude. We're
Yes, we
walking
are.
along the path.
And twice recorded, so one more recorded is a real chazaka on the recording process too.
Yeah, one more recording and say we've done Cheskas Chazakas. And we're back, dude. It feels awesome to be back, dude. I love doing this. It means a lot to me. It helps me out in life. In my week, gives me meaning, gives me purpose, gives me ideas, helps me just be creative, let the creative juices flowing. And on top of all that, you're one of my best friends out there. So, a quick idea that I didn't realize someone on a podcast the other day was just saying like, oh, and if you have more time, because if you build your business in the right way, you have more time to deepen your relationship with your friends. And I was like, what? You can do that? You can deepen relationships with friends? Like, I didn't realize that. I thought you were just a friend and that's it. It's a friend. Like, no, you go you could go on a random sushi day with a friend. You can talk to them once a week. You can go on a trip. Like, you're deepening relationship with a friend. So doing that as well with you, dude, is freaking awesome.
L'chaim.
L'chaim to
Peace,
our
Meyer.
coffees. See you, buddy.
All right.
Bye.